Take a breath. A real one, not the shallow inhale you take when you're stressed or rushing, but the kind of breath that reminds you you're alive. Let the air enter, expand, settle, and leave again. It seems simple, almost too small to matter, but in that single breath, something subtle happens. Your awareness returns, your thoughts slow. A quiet intelligence awakens beneath the noise. And if you felt even an inch of that shift, then pause here for one more moment. And if this message resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe, because what you're about to experience is a journey into parts of your mind that you may not have visited in years. Now, let's begin. Presence of mind is one of those concepts people assume they understand. They think it means concentration, or mindfulness, or the ability to stay calm when everything around them falls apart. And although those qualities are part of it, presence of mind is something much deeper, much more transformative. It isn't simply a skill, it's a reawakening. It's the rediscovery of the part of you that has been drowned beneath notifications, deadlines, anxieties, automatic reactions, and the relentless demand to be everywhere except where you are. Some people drift through life in a half-conscious fog without ever realizing something is missing. Others do feel it, the sense that their mind has become scattered, overstimulated, constantly buzzing like a hive without rest. You might wake up and feel like your thoughts are already running before your feet have even touched the floor. You might speak, but notice you weren't really listening. You might drive somewhere and realize you don't remember the last 10 minutes of the road. You might sit with someone you love and feel your mind drift, even though you want to be there. And the worst part isn't the distraction. It's the quiet grief of knowing you weren't fully alive in those moments. Presence of mind doesn't mean escaping life. It means finally returning to it. Humans weren't built to multitask their way through existence. Our brains were designed to experience life in real time, through a steady flow of awareness that guides our actions, protects our clarity, and connects us to meaning. But somewhere between the past we regret and the future we fear, we lose the present moment entirely. The mind becomes a time machine, dragging us through memories and imagined scenarios until we can no longer tell the difference between what is happening and what we're afraid might happen. Modern science finally caught up to what ancient masters discovered thousands of years ago. The mind is not stable by default. It drifts, it wanders, it loops, it reacts, and unless you train it, it will live anywhere except here, now, in this moment where your real life is unfolding. The tragedy is not that people lack intelligence. It's that they rarely access the intelligence available when their awareness is fully present. Imagine you owned a high-performance sports car, but spent your whole life driving it in first gear. That's how most people use their minds, not at full capacity, not with clarity, not with precision, but in fragmented bursts between distractions. Presence of mind isn't about adding something new. It's about reclaiming what was always yours. To understand this more deeply, consider the story of Siddhartha, the prince who had everything, yet felt hollow inside. He realized that while his body lived within the walls of a palace, his mind existed somewhere else entirely, drifting from one thought to another. And so, he created a practice, not religion, not doctrine, a practice built around the idea of remembering to be present. That practice, first called sati, later became what the world knows as mindfulness. But his intention wasn't to teach people to sit quietly. His intention was to show human beings how to reconnect with their awareness, because he understood that suffering thrives in the absence of presence. Search your own memory. The moments you regret most, the things you said without thinking, the impulsive choices, the arguments that spiraled out of control. Did they happen because you lacked intelligence? Or because, in those moments, you were not truly present? You lost yourself for just a second, but a second is enough to change a life. Across the world, Lao Tzu was observing the natural world and discovering the same truth. He noticed that water never forces anything. It does not fight its path. It moves with awareness, responding fluidly to whatever it encounters. That quality, being fully in the moment, responding without resistance, is what he called Wu Wei, effortless action. Not passive acceptance, but inspired precision. A state where your decisions are so attuned to the moment that everything you do seems natural, intuitive, even graceful. What happens when the presence of Siddhartha and the flow of Lao Tzu merge? You get the foundation of modern emotional intelligence, elite performance psychology, and the deepest awareness traditions on Earth. Presence of mind emerges from the union of two forces: awareness without judgment and action without resistance. To live like this doesn't require years in a monastery. It requires understanding that the mind is transformable, and that transformation begins faster than anyone imagined. Neuroscientists discovered that the brain can rewire itself in just 7 days through repeated micro-moments of awareness. Not hour-long meditation sessions, not complex spiritual practices. Simple seconds of clarity, inserted consistently, activate the neural pathways responsible for presence, resilience, and emotional regulation. The moment you pause before reacting, you strengthen presence. The moment you take one conscious breath, you strengthen presence. The moment you notice your thoughts, rather than becoming them, you strengthen presence. These brief sparks of awareness accumulate until your mind builds a new operating system, one that chooses clarity over chaos, intention over impulse, wisdom over reactivity. Your mind is plastic. It bends to whatever you repeat. If you repeat distraction, it masters distraction. If you repeat presence, it masters presence. But here's the truth that is hardest for most people to accept. The fog in your mind is not your fault. You weren't designed for the hyperstimulation of modern life. Your attention wasn't built for constant alerts, endless information, and the emotional shockwaves of digital communication. When you feel overwhelmed, scattered, mentally fatigued, or internally disconnected, it isn't a personal failure. It's the predictable result of an environment designed to hijack your awareness. Your brain is not broken. It is simply overloaded. The miracle is that awareness is still inside you. It never left. It only fell asleep beneath the noise. Presence of mind is the process of waking it up. But waking up doesn't happen through force. It happens through a shift, an internal turning toward yourself. And this turning has a single starting point: the pause. Every great leader, every warrior monk, every philosopher who mastered presence understood one thing: between every stimulus and every reaction, there is a gap. That gap is the seed of awareness. Most people live their entire lives without ever noticing it. Their reactions are immediate, automatic, unconscious. Someone insults them, they snap. A problem appears, they panic. A fear surfaces, they run. Their life becomes a chain of reflexes rather than choices. But when you train yourself to find that gap, to pause even for one breath, everything changes. In that breath, the prefrontal cortex reactivates. The emotional surge softens. The mind expands. Options appear. Wisdom becomes available. And life, for a moment, becomes something you are directing, rather than something directing you. This is the beginning of presence of mind. When you begin to understand the nature of presence, something remarkable happens to your perception of time. Moments feel longer, not because they drag, but because you are finally inhabiting them fully. Noise seems quieter, not because the world has changed, but because your internal turbulence has softened. And when you reach this turning point, the real transformation begins. Part 1 opened the doorway. Part 2 reveals how to walk through it, and how 7 days can fundamentally reshape how your mind reacts, perceives, and chooses. Think of this next phase not as a challenge, but as a homecoming. Every day will peel away a layer of mental fog, until what remains is the clear truth of your own awareness. A presence sharp enough to cut through chaos, gentle enough to calm storms, and steady enough to guide you, even in your most disorienting moments. Presence is not something you master once. It is something that masters you the moment you stop struggling. It's the quiet intelligence that rises when all internal noise fades. And the journey to access that intelligence begins with a simple realization. Your mind is training you every day, whether you want it to or not. The goal now is to reverse the direction of that training. Imagine waking up on day 1 of this journey. Before you check your phone, before you replay yesterday's worries, before you step back into the noise, you pause. Just a single pause, 3 seconds, that interrupts an entire lifetime of unconscious momentum. In those seconds, something ancient awakens. The ability to choose, the capacity to observe, the awareness that you are not your thoughts, but the consciousness behind them. As you move through the first day, these micro-pauses begin to accumulate like small stones forming a foundation. You may not feel it instantly, but your brain does. Neural pathways start firing differently. There is more space between impulse and action, more distance between thought and identification. The mind begins to shift from autopilot into self-awareness, and this single shift will follow you into every day of the week that follows. On day 2, something deeper takes place. Through intentional breathing, slowed, lengthened, anchored, you discover that your nervous system is not an enemy, but a messenger. You learn to soothe your internal storms not by fighting them, but by giving your body the signal that it is safe. It sounds almost too simple, breathing. But air is the oldest technology for self-regulation humans have ever known. The problem is that modern life made us forget it. When you reclaim conscious breath, you are reclaiming access to the switchboard that governs your emotional chemistry. A slow exhale tells your amygdala that no threat is present. A steady inhale informs your prefrontal cortex that you are ready to think again. And a single round of mindful breathing can often do what hours of worry cannot: reconnect you to clarity. By the end of day 2, you've already begun forming a new relationship with discomfort. The traffic that once irritated you becomes a training ground. The waiting room that once bored you becomes a sanctuary. The pause becomes a friend rather than a disruption. You begin to understand a profound truth. Presence is not found by adding more. It is found by removing resistance. Day 3 shifts your inner landscape even more dramatically. You begin to observe your own thoughts in real time, not by forcing yourself to be detached, but by noticing, with curiosity rather than judgment, what your mind is doing. You become aware that your anger is not you, but a passing surge, that your sadness is not a sentence, but a cloud, that your anxiety is not a failure, but a signal. This witnessing transforms emotions from tyrants into teachers. You might notice your heart beating faster, a tightening in your gut, a contraction in your chest. Instead of rejecting these sensations or identifying with them, you simply notice, here is fear. And surprisingly, the moment you name it, it loses a large part of its power. Naming creates distance. Distance creates understanding. Understanding creates calm. You begin to relate to your inner states with wisdom rather than reactivity. By day 4, you have enough awareness to begin practicing the most subtle and powerful principle, Wu Wei, effortless action. This practice teaches you how to move without internal friction, how to allow the present moment to guide you rather than trying to force your way through it. You will feel it first in the smallest tasks: washing dishes, walking, brushing your teeth. You will notice how often you rush, even when you don't need to. How often your mind is already 3 steps ahead, pulling your body behind it. But as you practice, something beautiful happens. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. Every small action becomes a pathway into deeper awareness. And through this, you begin to realize that the greatest breakthroughs in presence are not found in meditation halls. They're found in the mundane details of everyday life. Day 5 deepens your internal sensitivity. Through regular emotional check-ins, you start catching your feelings as they arise, instead of after they explode. You begin to see patterns, how irritation in the morning leads to impatience later, how stress in your shoulders affects your thoughts, how your breathing changes depending on the people you're with. This day teaches you something revolutionary. Emotional awareness is not emotional control. It precedes it. Awareness is the doorway. Control is the room behind it. Most people try to control emotions they have never bothered to observe. You are learning to reverse this mistake. Day 6 is when your transformation becomes visible, not just to yourself but to others. The sacred pause before responding, that single breath between hearing and reacting, becomes automatic. People notice you are calmer, more grounded, more articulate. Difficult situations that once overwhelmed you now feel navigable, even manageable. You have not lost emotion. You have gained perspective. Your mind feels more spacious, and your responses more intentional. Conversations flow differently. You listen more deeply. You speak more clearly. You're no longer racing to fill silence or fighting for your opinion to dominate. You start to sense the emotional temperature of a room and adjust your presence without shrinking yourself. You've become someone who leads not through force, but through grounded clarity. And then comes day 7, the day where everything integrates. This is not a day of effort. It is a day of realization. You wake up with the understanding that presence isn't something you practice anymore. It's something you've become. It's woven into how you breathe, how you think, how you move through the world. The fog is thinner, the noise quieter, the mind steadier. You realize that presence of mind is not just a skill, it is a way of being. This final day also reveals a deeper truth. Presence is not about controlling life. It is about meeting life fully. It doesn't protect you from pain, but it prevents pain from becoming suffering. It doesn't stop challenges from arising, but it ensures challenges don't become crises. It doesn't silence your thoughts, but it allows them to pass without dragging you into unconscious spirals. The world has not changed, but you have. And because you have changed, the world appears different. The greatest gift of mastering presence of mind is not mental clarity, not emotional stability, not even improved decision-making, although you will experience all of these in extraordinary ways. The greatest gift is that you come back to yourself. You return to your own life. You rediscover the experience of living consciously instead of drifting. Your mind becomes a place you trust instead of a place you fear. Your emotions become signals instead of threats. Your thoughts become tools instead of masters. Your awareness becomes the anchor of everything you do. This is the power of presence in its fullest form. And here is the final realization. Presence is not an escape from life. It is an embrace of it. Not a retreat, but a homecoming. Not stillness, but freedom. If you've reached this point and felt something awaken, something familiar, something ancient, something that feels like truth, then don't let it fade. Stay with this journey. Continue deepening your mastery of presence. And if this exploration has connected with you, subscribe, because there is so much more waiting for you. More tools, more inner practices, more mind-shifting principles designed to help you become the most present, powerful, and grounded version of yourself. Your mind is ready. Your awareness is awakening. The next chapter of your consciousness begins now.